All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 1st, 2021 meeting of the Village Council of Yellow Springs. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Indeed. Hausch.
I'm here.
McQueen.
Here.
Becky Stokes.
Here.
Krieger.
Present.
Curlis. I got the nod. Thank you. Also present are Village Manager Josue Salmeron, Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger. I believe Finance Director Matt Dillon will be here any moment, and Village Solicitor Brianne Parcels. Josue, are we expecting Johnny Burns?
Yes, he will be joining.
Okay, so Public Works Director.
And Matt is online.
Okay, fantastic.
All right. Thank you, Judy. And I'm also happy to see that Lisa and Kevin are appropriately distanced in the library stacks. So that seems like a great way to separate. So actually, I want to begin our meeting tonight with a moment of silence. Many of you are aware that March 1st has been designated as COVID Memorial Day. And I'd like to take a moment to think about the many that we have lost. And Mary Ann McQueen, if you'd like to add any thoughts about this day. You're on mute, Marianne.
I was walking down the bike path and saw some flowers strewn around the bike path. And then in front of the train station, there was this flowered heart and a sign above it that said the Floral Heart Project. So I thought, well, that's really nice. I took a photograph of it. I don't know if that can come up on our screen or not.
It's up.
Maybe it is. I don't see it.
Yeah.
So I just was doing a little research about it. It is in honor or in commemorating the over 500,000 people that have died, and also all the people that have suffered through this pandemic. And the idea for these hearts was started by a woman from Ellsworth, Maine, who actually is living in New York right now, city. And there appeared to be at least 100 hearts across the country, placed like ours in Yellow Springs. I saw that there's one, I think, in Canton and a couple other in Ohio, but they're all across the country. And my understanding is that that'll be left there for 3 days, and people can add flowers to it if they would like. And I would also like to add, because we know that we have lost some people in Yellow Springs through COVID. And we also know that there are a lot of people that have been suffering. And we've had people who have died, well, as well. And something that Josue and I had talked about, I don't remember if we had mentioned it at council, would be that once a month at a council meeting, that we list the names of the people who have died in Yellow Springs and have a moment of silence, because everyone is important, and we thought that might be a way to acknowledge people who have passed. So we can talk about that later, but I think that this is an example of maybe we'll start that as a tradition.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And Josue, I also appreciate you coordinating with the Floral Heart Project locally to support this day of memory for the loss of over 500,000 people, many that probably we did not need to lose, as well as just some of our local losses. I also think, Philip, if we can post a little bit more about this initiative. My understanding is that there's a goal to create a rose for every life lost. And that's an initiative that's going on moving forward to create more commemorations around this. So anyway, we'll keep people informed. Do we have any other announcements?
I have an announcement, Brian,
Laura?
just to remind people that April the 5th is the registration deadline for voter registration for the May 4th election. I'm not quite sure what's on the ballot, but if you want to vote, be sure you check your registration by April 5th.
Yeah, thanks for that, Laura. And probably people are hearing that yet again, the Republicans are trying to limit people's ability to vote. So please stay on top of this. Anything else?
I have two announcements.
Yes, Lisa.
First, I want to remind folks, many of you already have a Blacks in Yellow Springs Encyclopedia, and that's something that's produced by the 365 Project. And I want to just reinforce the message that the 2021 supplement to the Blacks in Yellow Springs Encyclopedia is now available, as well as the Gaunt biography that's called Legacy of Grace. And both of those are now available for purchase through the 365 Project website. They also have a P.O. box. But, I really encourage people to look into that. Then secondly, I want to once again applaud the work of the Art and Culture Commission and point people to the 2021 protest poster exhibit that's posted downtown. And it's on the lamppost on Dayton Street and Xenia Avenue. And you may have seen, if you subscribe to the Yellow Springs News, that there is now a scannable QR code. And if you scan that, it will give detailed insights on each of the banners and where those came from and the history of those banners. So it gives you a nice little walking tour now that the weather is a little bit warmer and you're walking around downtown. And I want to express my thanks again to the very active members of the Yellow Springs Art and Culture Commission who've done a lot of work to make this possible. And I also want to thank Johnny Burns and his team, because nothing goes up downtown like that without their work. So thank you. That's all.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. Marianne, something else?
I walked downtown today and I was just transfixed by being able to see all those banners. It's just so cool. I felt so proud. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Brian, I would like to add that the images and the description of those posters are on our website. So if you go to our main page and click through our header, you can get to those posters. So there's a gallery view of all of them, and you can click through the image and get a history story on it.
All right, thanks for that, Josue. Any other announcements?
I have one announcement, Brian. I'm sad to report that we had vandalism on the George Floyd mural in Keith Alley. So we're investigating that matter, and any information that could lead to us to find the person responsible for that, we would appreciate it. So if anyone saw anything or has any information, please call our dispatch window at 937-767-7206.
All right, thanks, Josue. And that was disappointing to say the least. One other thing that I did want to highlight, because this happened last week in between meetings, is celebrating our own officer, Dennis Nipper. 49 years on the force and going strong. And it's been great to see that kind of longevity and commitment to our community. So thanks, Nipper, for all that you do. And with that, I'll move us into the consent agenda. And we have two items, which are the minutes from our last meeting, as well as the minutes from our council retreat. And I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yeah, Krieger.
Why, yes.
Kerr.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move into reviewing our agenda. And is there anything we need to add, revise, or remove?
I would like to add some time to the goals session, which I think right now is 10 minutes, because there are some goals that I have been waiting really since last month to bring up, and it's timely enough that I want to just talk a little bit and set up a longer time later. But I'd like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yep, I think that, so extending the time on that discussion, that sounds good. Okay. Actually, I had secretly thought we would probably let it go a little bit longer anyway. So, so thanks for flagging that at the beginning. Anything else? Okay, then we are going to move into petitions and communications. Mary Ann.
Yes, we had a few. I had submitted 2 reports from the Strong Towns webinars that they've been doing through February and March. And one was on how to promote small scale development, and the other was on how to support a local food system. And next March 4th, for those who might want to listen or participate at 1 o'clock, is Growing Entrepreneurs. And you can contact me or Raven at the Village to get the link to that. We also got communication from the Ohio State University Extension Service on Master Gardener Training, volunteer Master Gardener Training, starting February 3rd through April 28th. Greene County provided information about COVID vaccines, in particular available at the Russ Research Center. And lastly, Mercy Health Mobile is doing mammograms at the John Bryan Center, and you have on March 8th from 10 in the morning to 4, and you need to register. That's it.
All right, thanks, Mary Ann. So we're going to move into, we've got a few pieces of legislation, and the first one is ordinance, is that 2021-04, and Judy, we can read that in by title only, please.
Okay, this is the 2021 first quarter supplemental appropriations and declaring an emergency, Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio.
I move we approve the ordinance.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All right. Is Matt going to talk about this?
Yes, I am. Yeah, this ordinance is just authorizing for the purchase of the land for the Agraria bike path in the amount of $60,000.
Okay. And I think everyone saw that that's also coming from the Green Space Fund, as we discussed. So great. Any questions or comments for, well, actually, I guess I'm opening a public hearing since it's an emergency reading. So I'm going to open the public hearing. Do we have any questions or comments for Matt or otherwise? Okay, if not, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Stokes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Excuse me. I didn't realize that supplemental was for that project.
Yeah.
So I'm going to withdraw my motion. Somebody else have to move it, and I'm going to recuse. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Yeah.
I move that, I make the motion then rather than second.
Okay. Okay, we got a second.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll open the hearing one more time in case there's any last words. Close it, and Judy, if we can call the roll.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have resolution 2021-11, and Judy, we can read this also in by title only.
All right, this is designating Judy Kintner as Village Council's designee to receive public records training on behalf of each of the elected officials pursuant to and in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 109.43B and 149.43E1.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay. And Judy, do you want to speak to this one, or Brianne?
I can speak to it. It's a complete CYA. You folks are good about actually getting the training, but it's got to be, I need every certificate on file for a clean audit. So the easiest way to absolutely make sure we always get a clean audit is for me to take it on behalf of all of council. And then I just keep the separate certificates as they come in, but the auditor only has to see mine to pass us. And so it just makes life a little easier and more certain.
Yeah, the only thing I could add to that is that it's a pretty standard practice in most municipalities that have a council form of government to designate their clerk as the public records person to be trained. But the Attorney General's office does make this free to the public, so you can all complete it online at your leisure. As Judy said, the real thing to be concerned with is that we do have the designation so that we get a clean audit finding.
Okay.
And the auditors do look at these certificates. First thing they look at.
Yeah, I'm sure it's an easy box to check off. So, all right. Well, thanks, Judy. Thanks, Brianne. And and I also appreciate, since we're talking a little bit about it to the community, that this is a training that all of your council members go through as well. So with that, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Yes, Stokes.
Yes, and thank you, Judy.
You're welcome. McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving into, because we have we do. We're moving into citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda when we entertain any comments about items that are not on the agenda. We ask that you limit those comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any citizen concerns? Okay. I'm not seeing any. So with that, we're going to move into special reports. And first off, we've got, I believe, Lisa and Marianne reporting out about the Yellow Springs Development Corporation and our first year with that new entity. So, Lisa?
I'll get started. So hopefully you had a chance to look at the report, and phew, all I have to say is what a year it has been. But it's been my honor to participate in the Yellow Springs Development Corporation, which really is a truly collaborative economic development entity. Little did we know when we worked really, really hard to get this collaborative entity in place, how much we would need it when the pandemic struck. Like, as the pandemic struck and as I saw the work that we as a collaborative between the village, the township, the community foundation, the college, the schools, the chamber, we were poised to really have this collaborative work. And I think you've all seen, that work in action. It's a fledgling 501c3. I think you maybe know it, as it says in the report, that the YSDC is a charitable nonprofit corporation, and it's permitted under certain chapters of the Ohio Revised Code. And it's required that the Board of Trustees maintain a minimum of 40% of the voting members as elected government officials or their designated representatives. So in the report, you'll see who the 2020 voting members were. So, maybe for those who don't see the report, I'll name them quickly and then highlight the 2021 changes. Lisa Abel is the president. Also members are Corey Van Osdell. She's a a designated representative from the township, Steve Kahn from the school board, Sarah Courtwright from the Chamber of Commerce, replacing Karen Wintrow, Don Hollister from the township. I'm the vice president. Patrick Lake, who was a community member for 2020. Marianne McQueen, everyone knows who that is. Steve McQueen is the secretary. He's also representing the school board. And Hannah Montgomery, who is the treasurer, is from Antioch College. And then we also have a group of ex officio members, Gina Marie Cox, who tirelessly supports us from the Community Foundation, Dr. Holden from the schools, Maureen Lynch, who stepped in to replace Tom Manley as an ex officio from the college, Josue, and Alex Scott, representing now the Chamber of Commerce. So just to give you a little bit of a review, just to let you know how fast this has all come to be. The very first meeting to even talk about forming this entity was in late January of 2019. And the first articles of incorporation were filed in July of 2019. So between January and July of 2019, there was a group of us working on the documentation for the 501c3, trying to understand who the constituents would be and what might this even look like. And we were so happy in November 13th, which is my husband's birthday of 2019. Of course, he wasn't born that day. The final code of regulations was approved. And in January 6th of 2020, which, was not that long ago, in resolution 2019-44, the Yellow Springs Village Council designated the YSDC as the economic development organization for the village of Yellow Springs. In March, we filed for IRS 501c3 status. We had to have the confirmation from the various elected official entities before we could do that. And in April 23rd, 2020, our IRS 501c3 determination letter was received. In 2020, some of the highlights that I wanted to share is that we administered $35,000 in what we call potentially forgivable loans to 21 businesses in Miami Township and Yellow Springs during the first wave of the COVID crisis. This happened in 2 funding cycles. The first one was focused on downtown Yellow Springs businesses. And then in the second round, the township gave some additional funds and we were able to open it up to be available to Yellow Springs businesses as well as in the township. That entire process was completed and we forgave all of those loans. We also act as a convener for the first phase of a proposed collaboration of use of land and buildings on Antioch College campus for Yellow Springs schools and the community children's center and the college. So this is something that's starting to make its way into the discussion about the schools. Is it even possible that the K-12 building might be on the Antioch College property, creating a potential win-win for the college and for the schools? And it was because of this pre-work, this convening, that this was even able to be possible to get on the table as an option that's now being discussed by Dr. Holden and the community. We also worked with Miami Township to sell the old fire station to new ownership. This work is still in process. The deal hasn't closed, but it's very close. And I included in the report what the evaluation criteria were for this first large project, because I wanted to, and Marianne, I really want to highlight, thank you, Marianne, for encouraging this to be in the report so people can see the various considerations that we had as a fledgling entity with our first opportunity to look at the impact of these proposals for people, culture, profit, wage, taxes, environmental impact, job creation, local impact, and diversity. These are not easy choices to make. And so we're working really hard to try to continue to tune those up. And I'll say more about that in a minute. And then a subgroup also worked with the Community Foundation and other local stakeholders on the economic development aspects of housing in the village. So because it's not January 1st, I just kind of bled a little bit into 2021 to say that what's new in 2021 already is that Patrick Blake's term ended, and I want to thank Patrick for the many contributions that he made to the YSDC. And we now have welcomed Shelley Blackman as a new at-large director. We've begun work to establish 2021 goals. And as I mentioned earlier, we're really trying to evaluate and refine our decision-making criteria based on lessons learned from the firehouse opportunity. There's also some updates to our bylaws that we're going to be voting on in March. One of those is to modify the membership to be more inclusive of the township, because the YSDC is the village of Yellow Springs and the township. And so we hope soon to be having some conversations with Clifton, because, you know, part of Clifton is part of the township, and we want to open our arms a little bit more widely, which is appropriate. And then we also really wanted to modify our membership statement in our bylaws. And as soon as we vote on these bylaws, I'll make sure they're in the packet. I didn't include them yet because we are not voting on them until tomorrow, I think it is. I think it's tomorrow, not Wednesday, meeting blur. But we wanted to include the statement that the YSDC strives to appoint directors that reflect the diversity of the Yellow Springs and township communities. So, Mary Ann, do you have anything to add? I feel like I've been talking a long time.
Sure. I've been on the commission for a year, and I feel like I've just gotten to the point where I feel like, you know, I'm part of it. We meet once a month, so for what, about an hour and a half or so, I forget. Anyway, so what I would like for us to think about and talk about a little bit is what is the village government's interest? How would you like us to be representing? How would you like Lisa and I to be representing the village government on the Yellow Springs Development Corporation? Are there particular things you would like us to do, particular areas you'd like us to focus on? So I just think about that for a minute. And one comment that I have in terms of how the organization functions is that I think that it would be good for us, the people, the Development Corp, to figure out a way to have it be more public. It is a what is it called? A semi-autonomous,
quasi-governmental.
Quasi-governmental organization. So it is, people can listen in. It's sort of difficult now because it's all virtual, but there is no thing in the agenda that we don't have, like citizens' concerns. Surely people could comment on topics, but I do think that that will be helpful for us as we move into the future to think about how we can have more community participation. Then my personal interest in what I'd like to see happen is for the group to talk more deeply about what kind of economy we want to be looking at. And I think the importance of having a diverse economy, and a diverse economy in part because we know the more small businesses we have, the better. I have a friend who was a financial analyst who grew up in Yellow Springs, worked for Goldman Sachs and retired after a decade. And he said to me quite a while ago, he said, you know, Marianne, Yellow Springs shouldn't be going after 5 companies that hire 100 people. We should go after 100. We should create 100 companies that hire 5 people. In other words, you know, the small entrepreneur that are already here. So I would like the Development Corporation to consider how we might support sort of growing entrepreneurs, people within the village. We're small. As I said, we only meet once a month. So we don't have a lot of resources, at least at this point. But I think given that what Lisa has already shown, the response to COVID, that we can, I'm going to use the word, be an activist organization. I hope that fits with people's model. In other words, not just receiving projects, but actually thinking about how we want to engage in terms of economic development. So I'm going to go back to the question I asked, which was, what would the village council, what is the village government, what would you all like us to be thinking about doing in terms of this organization for 2021?
Kevin, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I do want to commend the entire group, Marianne, Lisa, and everyone else that's involved for the great work that you've done, and in particular, the responses to the COVID pandemic. I had said in another venue how much work the community foundation had done and how much I appreciated that. So I do want to again commend everyone. With respect to the education corridor, I mean, I've spent a great deal of time talking to, well, Patrick Lake and others. So I feel like I'm an adjunct member of the group, but we appreciate the effort and the consideration that's being put forward with the process that y'all have been going through and making determination about the usefulness of certain pieces of land and whatnot. And so I don't know if another individual will take over that particular point person role that Patrick seemed to play, but definitely appreciate his effort and appreciate the time we spent working together on that. So to speak, Marianne, to your question, well, 2 things actually. First of all, in the larger picture, and appreciate you all putting the criteria, the selection criteria that you used, for the Miami Township building in the report. And I don't know if we, could have or should have weighed in on it, but it just maybe in real time would have been nice to have been aware of what the criteria were, because there were questions in the community about what was going on and how things worked out. So if we were more up to speed on some of those data points, that would have been slightly helpful. And with respect again to your question, Marianne, in terms of what we can do, probably the village, well, I think council and government could perhaps respond to some of the issues that you all are dealing with. In other words, when entrepreneurs or small businesses are perhaps coming to you, or the ones that you've dealt with, I mean, you have records of everyone you assisted with the loans, but I wonder if somewhere along the way you had some dialogue with some of those folks, and whereas some entrepreneur might say, well, it sure would be nice if you could do this in the village, and where that thing or that activity is some shifting of laws or rules or ordinances to help create a more entrepreneur or business friendly environment. So in other words, I think if you could sort of capture your question as, what can we do to get to that, Marianne, those 100 businesses with 5 employees each? Well, I think those 100 entrepreneurs might have some input. And so, maybe some of that input could be packaged in a way and presented to us in a manner that where, to the degree that those activities are in our wheelhouse, where we could modify or change the environment to make it better for one business or another.
Laura?
Well, how much time do we have? I have a long list. But to pick up on what Kevin said, maybe the chamber could do a listening tour to the current entrepreneurs. I know for myself, I'm an entrepreneur professional, and one of the great needs in the community is for more professional office space, sort of the Class A, Class B type. Not huge spaces, obviously, for people starting out, but and a really terrific resource, if people don't know about it, is the Cohatch property over on High Street. Now, that's a shared workspace, similar to Cohatch or the Co-Active Yellow Springs, similar to Cohatch in Springfield. So these are kind of starting to fill that niche. But I think focusing, one thing that CICs or CDCs do a lot of is figure out how to offer matching grants to business owners with buildings similar to our building profile. The reason for that is these older buildings, of course, deteriorate over time, and we can see that by just looking. And one great example of a matching grant program that was helping businesses during COVID was to do some HVAC renovations for better air filtration. But things like roofs, windows, tuck pointing, HVAC, these kind of grants really can't, often they're 50-50 matching grants. There used to be community development block grant money for that. I don't know if there still is or if we're eligible. But in any event, these kind of grants can make a huge difference in keeping the business core, their business buildings in good shape so that people want to come to them, they work for the employees and everybody else. So that would be a huge undertaking, but it's one typically done by CDCs. Yeah, as Brian knows, we're both big trail fans. I like to say trails are economic development. And we need definitely to get connected to Clifton. I'd love to get connected to Fairborn and the Huffman Trail. That connects us, we're part of that national trail system, and that's going to be really important. It's a great attractor for younger people, this whole region. We're in the sweet spot in the whole nation for paved trail system. And then lastly, to the extent that the YSDC turns its focus from strictly economic development, business development to something like housing, there's a huge need for apartment home complex for moderate income people. A huge need, as well as condominiums in the moderate income level. So these would be things I would focus on. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Laura. Just a couple things I wanted to highlight. First of all, I wanted to, again, being part of those initial talks and seeing this organization come to fruition and I think have some short-term successes has been great. I did want to highlight that those forgivable loans, it was nice to see the township sort of follow suit with the village, who initially, kind of took that. Wasn't a leap. It was a great investment to get those funds out there to support the community and that could leverage other funds. That's really great activity. So one of the things I have been thinking a lot about, and I felt like it was kind of underlying some of the notes that we read and some other things I've heard, is around technical assistance. And I guess specifically when I'm thinking about technical assistance in this realm, I'm thinking about ways that we can make sure projects that would be great for the village have some support to be developed. And so I think one of the things that is good to keep in mind is sort of but for the YSDC, what things would or wouldn't happen. And, I think a big part of why all the different entities have invested in the Development Corporation is the fact that we want to guide things in a way that will complement the village, the values of all the villagers and the entities, but also make sure that we can, as much as possible, influence development in a way that is in line with what we want to see in our community. And so I think looking at how we can help burgeoning entrepreneurs develop their ideas, and we can move beyond the mindset of who's ready to go and think about who we can cultivate to have some really good projects rise to the top would be great. And I would imagine that all the entities involved would want to support that because that really is how we, become local. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I think it was sparked by what I read in the paper, is making sure that the representatives of the different entities are truly representing the values and those constituencies. So I read something that suggested that maybe sometimes the appointees might not be fully connected with the groups that they're representing. And so I want to make sure that that is happening. And certainly from the village's perspective, I want to make sure that, our representatives, which I know they are representing our village values and thinking about, who has elected us and what they've elected us to do. I guess the last thing I wanted to mention was related to the idea, and actually I took a note about this, that we are looking, I guess, specifically at some of those opportunities. I think it's what Laura talked about a bit that reminded me that I think we do have some really great opportunities here. And I want to make sure that we are also communicating, back and forth so that if there are opportunities to help guide some of those processes, if there are things that the village as well as the other entities can support, that we're doing that. But, overall, I think it's been an interesting first year, and I'm looking forward to and glad to hear that there's room to refine some of those practices as we move forward. Last thing I wanted to ask about in the report was the comment at the end of 2020, worked with Village Community Foundation and other local stakeholders on the economic development aspects of housing in the village. And I wondered if maybe we could just hear a little bit more about that piece since housing came up.
Yeah, I really wasn't involved in that group, but I think maybe Marianne was involved in those conversations. Marianne?
I was not aware that that group was really part of the YSDC, even though some people might have been on it. I assume that what that's talking about is the group that Florence Randolph and Len Kramer and Emily Seibel that were helping renters and maybe homeowners, but mostly renters who needed help during COVID. So I don't know.
Yeah, I can double check on that. That sounds right. I mean, because of the role of the community foundation, there were a lot of, it sort of was like during COVID, we're still during COVID, but almost like an octopus, with all these different entities.
Right. So
I can seek additional clarification on that, Brian, if you'd like it. Also circling back to other comments, Patrick Lake is continuing to report to the YSDC regarding the education corridor, although he is no longer a voting member. These meetings are publicly noticed, and I appreciate the comment about it being more publicly accessible, but we do notice them, but there is not a formal agenda item for citizen concerns although we do have some community members that attend fairly frequently.
Actually, Lisa, can I jump in on that one? That was the other comment I spaced on, is I wanted to say, I really appreciate that the YSDC is so much more public than the former CIC we had. And so I really do appreciate that. Sorry.
Well, thanks, because I mean, we made the decision early on to go as far as we can to comply with all the sunshine laws and public notice, but I hear your point about having a formal citizen concerns agenda. Also, maybe Marianne will join me in maybe giving more detailed reports to council, because things like those criteria, we're all in our minutes, but we haven't been reporting out, that explicitly on everything, so we can do more of that. And I'm really appreciative of the feedback, and we'll certainly take this back to the DC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the feedback has been very helpful for Lisa and I to be able to go back and help work on new goals. And I didn't want to imply that the group was not public. And I am aware of what happened with community resources and the concerns about that. And so I thought that there should be some way that we can encourage more public participation, however that is. And I think that's something we can talk about.
All right, well, I think the last thing I want to say is Lisa and Marianne, thank you so much for the time that you spend with the Development Corporation. I do believe that, us continuing to think about how we can build capacity to accomplish all the things we want to do is so important. And I know you guys are representing the village well. So we are going to move into the treasurer's reports, and Judy Kittner, our treasurer, will lead that discussion off.
All right. Well, I'm just going to sort of lay it out for you, and it's my kind of treasurer's report. It's super simple because of COVID. So right now we have under active investment $10,067,687. That is an increase of $74,329 since the beginning of 2020, which is a pretty good thing. Earnings from September through December of 2020 were Star Ohio, $858.10. Raymond James, $4,728.76, and West Banco, $22,265. Brad Drager's extremely extensive quarterly report is included in the packet for your reading pleasure. The village currently has 2.4 million in Star Ohio, almost 500,000 in the Raymond James investment account, and $6,940,135 in the West Banco account. So Star Ohio right now is earning 0.09% on a one-day commitment. Raymond James accounts, the CD purchases are earning an average of 1.92% on a 1.88-year commitment. So of note with regard to investment is 71% of the village's funds are in the general sweep account at West Banco, 4.8% in Raymond James, and 24% in Star Ohio. The current treasury rates are starting to creep up, but even the 5-year note is at under 0.75%. So those just are of no interest at this point in terms of investment. The fixed interest rate at West Banco of 1.25% was guaranteed for 5 years when that sweep account was open fall of 2020. And that continues to be pretty remarkable. Their current public rate is 0.15%. So this is our best possible investment for the near term and is extremely liquid. Liquidity for Star Ohio is 24 hours and West Banco is immediate. The plan currently is that all remaining funds in Star Ohio will be moved to West Banco tomorrow. So $2.4 million will move into the West Banco account and begin earning an additional 1.16%. That Star Ohio account remains active even with a zero balance, so that remains an investment option that is open to us. And I included some extremely Pac-Man looking pie charts down below if you like that sort of thing. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for Judy?
Well, no questions, but a comment. I do appreciate the report. It was surprising to me that the West Benkel account, was top of the list in terms of investment vehicles. Didn't expect that. I appreciate the comment saying this is not typical, but it's working today. So that was good. And yes, and all the, I think Brad is the gentleman's name. His report is always chock full of useful information. And we appreciate it. Thank you. You're doing a great job, Judy. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I really appreciated the report. I could read it. I could understand it. I always like those little charts. And that's why we put the money in West Banco, Kevin, because we're getting a better return than we were where it had been.
Well, we used to be getting a loss. So
we're getting a lot. Okay, yeah.
yeah, we were paying money before.
And it's a regional bank. And the more local and regional we can be, I think the better usually.
Yep. Lisa? Laura?
No comments, thank you.
Okay.
I just think that the community should join us in like this. It's so great that everything isn't a loss. Really, seriously. It's very positive, and I do think there's a lot of information that's really helpful. So thank you. Thank you, Judy, for the great report.
Thanks.
Yeah, I will say it's being on council for 7 years, it's taken some time to get to where we're at, and I'm really happy about it. One thing, Judy, that I would like to see, and maybe we could have it in the next packet, is a comparison, at least for the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, of just kind of what the returns have been, the ROI. Especially, so it doesn't have to be like for every treasurer's report, but since this one is closing 2020, I think it'd be good to just kind of see like how we ended up in 2020 versus the past 4 or 5 years. And I know our gains were not as great, but I also know that compared to when we just had it sitting doing nothing, we're still doing much better. So.
Okay, do you want that broken down by investment type or just the overall rates of return?
We've seen a chart like that before. So I was just thinking mostly just because now that we know what we did in 2020, it'd be good to see that. So,
one of the things that you didn't see in this, you didn't see a couple of the graphic charts. And I had spoken with Matt Dillon about that. And he said, well, it's going to be a complete apples and oranges comparison because in prior years, you never used your available funds as investment funds. That is, we didn't have a sweep account that took into consideration for investment those funds that we needed absolutely liquid for things like payroll. And now we do. So it looks as if we've chunked up our amount for investment by a significant amount. So those charts just didn't really compare well to one another. But yes, I can do a year by year.
Okay. All right. So let's move into old business. And first item on old business is our meaningful actions related to racism being a public health crisis. And we have one item in particular to focus on, and then maybe a few other things to talk about. And we had a good discussion at our last JSCC meeting about the Encounter Data initiative. And actually, I'm going to let Lisa and Josue talk about this because they've done the real work on it. But the concept is essentially that we are going to pilot getting input about interactions between our peace officers and folks that they are interacting with the ultimate goal of expanding this to all of the village team, so that whenever anyone on the village team is interacting with a community member or a visitor, they have the opportunity to talk about that interaction so that we can make sure that we're continuously improving. So Lisa, I think I'm going to pass it to you first, and then Josue, you can follow up with any details. So.
Having trouble getting off mute here. So the idea of collecting this encounter data was something that reaches back to our earliest conversations about having a citizens advisory or a way to collect feedback from the community anonymously about their experience with village employees. The discussion didn't begin just with the police, but Josue was always interested in every encounter with the village employees. And, this work has kind of expanded and contracted as we've worked on it, but primarily we felt that it was necessary to develop something like this because the reality is that some people, they don't want to take a risk of giving any kind of feedback about a negative experience on the record because they fear that system of power inherently. And so we knew we needed to come up with some way to give people a perceived and actually safe way to give feedback about encounter data, starting with the police. And people are probably sick of me saying this, but I'm going to say it again. And that is, my experience as a pediatric ICU nurse is that we would receive very positive feedback from families, even whose children had died. And that isn't that they were happy that their children died. It's because despite having the most horrific experience of their life, they still felt that they were treated with respect and compassion. And that this is what I keep thinking about when I think about this encounter data. It doesn't mean that you're glad you got stopped. It means that when you were having that experience, which you didn't really want to have, you were treated with compassion and behavior consistent with the guidelines for policing in the village of Yellow Springs. And so at first we had a really long and kind of convoluted survey where we were looking at different kinds of encounters, like, do you just talk to dispatch, or did you get pulled over, or did someone come to your house? And it just got kind of out of control. And so where we are now is kind of going back to the basics and asking a few very simple, what I would call customer satisfaction type questions, and collecting the data using technology that allows us to link the feedback to a particular officer so that we can start to get a handle on encounter data, both challenging and positive, from our community. So I will turn it over to Josue, who may be way more succinct. But that's kind of where I'm coming from with this project. And I also, before I hand over, just want to say that I've been grateful that the members of the PD, not just the chief, but the members of the PD have been active in giving feedback on this, because we have known from the very beginning that unless those folks are actively buying into this activity, it won't succeed. Josue?
Thank you, Lisa. You covered it all. I think the only thing I'll add is that given the challenges that Lisa pointed to, that we were trying to catch everything and it just kept growing a bit out of control, because there are so many things that our officers are involved in that it's difficult to come up with the one tool that serves all of our input needs. So we've come up with a good tool now. It's very focused on looking at traffic stops and how the officers handle the traffic stops. So it's very specific. And from there, we will learn from the process and improve upon it and expand the service areas that we will be looking to collect feedback from our citizens. So that's great. We're using a platform, our Microsoft SharePoint platform, to do the data collection and analysis. So it's a robust tool, and it's meant for this kind of complex capability, collecting large amount of data and being able to do something with it. So I'm excited that we were able to roll this out. And in the future, we hope to be able to have feedback for all of our services so that we can have a process to collect input from our services and find ways of improving the customer experience and the services we provide to our residents.
So Josue, I want to pull it up briefly just to highlight a few things. Would you rather do that with the link, or do you want to do it from the packet with what I...
It depends on what are you hoping to accomplish. If it's just going to be static, I think showing the document just on the screen that you put in a packet would do. But if we want to, go through the different pages or the platform, I think it would be best to bring it up on our
if it's easy enough to bring up the link, we can just whip through a couple things. And if you want to do that, one thing I do want to highlight is, in this pilot mode, the concept, and Lisa referenced this, is to connect people via a QR code to the particular officer that they had the interaction with. I imagine that may be one of the things that we realize we need to tweak or need to think about, since QR codes may not be easy for everyone to handle. And, so I just want to mention, like, some of the things that we're initially thinking about could be part of how we refine it moving forward. But yeah, if we look at that, so you have it pulled up, Josue, or?
I do.
Okay, cool.
So this is our online survey.
Yeah. So I just want to, if we can kind of page down, first of all, mention that on this first page, there are 3 required fields. There's the date of the interaction, the time of the interaction, and then on the bottom, whether or not you are a resident of Yellow Springs. So otherwise, and this was in the packet, so I'm sure everyone looked at it, we have several questions related to the interaction itself. But again, it was kept simple. I think that this is, makes a lot of sense to pilot in this way, but we'll also learn whether the questions need to be tweaked and so forth. So if you answer those 3 questions, it will push you to the next page. And this is where you basically make a decision about whether you want to remain anonymous or whether you want to give your contact information. So again, you don't have to do anything that shows up on the second page, but if you decide that you do want to go on the record and you want to interact with somebody, you will have that ability as well. I was happy to see the initiative behind this. It actually wasn't on our master list of things we were doing, but I think it's a great initiative, and I look forward to seeing how it develops. Does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns?
I have a question. I have no idea what a QR code is, and I totally do not understand how someone would access this. So I'd like that. That's the only thing. How do people know what to do or how to do it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Josue, do you want to talk about that as your?
Yes. So the method of distribution, I'll walk through what we envisioning the whole process going through. For the access to the survey, there'll be multiple ways of accessing the survey. One of it is through a direct link. The current link of the survey is somewhat of a long list. We're going to make what's called a tiny URL, and you've seen Philip is really good at making these really short, tiny URLs for a lot of our content. So Philip's able to turn what is a massive web address to just a few characters, and we'll have the URL code for the survey. The other way that is easy to distribute the link to the survey is through the QR code. And this, what you're looking at on your screen, is a QR code. You're going to see this in the newspaper with the information for the banner, the protest banners, that the QR code is going to go in the newspaper. So the idea is you can pull out your phone and just point to it, and the phone scans. Most of the phones nowadays, the camera on the phone is a QR scanner. Now most of the phones are being designed in that way, where you no longer need to download an app to be able to read a barcode or a QR code scanner. Your phone's camera app would do it. So the idea is you just point your camera to the QR code, and your phone will tell you what information's in that QR code. It'll tell you what title and information, and then they'll usually provide you with a link that you click through it and get to it. So those are going to be the methods, the primary methods of accessing the survey. If we need to make surveys available paper format, we will make those available should anyone need it. But we envision the primary source being through an online content that is directed by the participant, the survey participant. The officers, we will make cards for the officers that will have a message says, tell us what your experience was today. I'll have the officer's name. It'll look like a business card. And on it, either on the front or in the back of the car, it would have a QR code, so that the participant or the individual that was part of the interaction with the officer, they'll pull out the camera and scan the card, and it'll take them to the survey. So those are the methods what we envision doing it as we kick this off. The Matthew just pointed out in the chat box, it says that it's the same technology the brewery and mini restaurants are using now to deliver menus, like the restaurant menu. That's right. I've been to restaurants just a handful full of times during this pandemic, and one particular had the QR code right on the table. So if you want to look at the menu, you just put your camera on the table, and boom, the menu pops up on your device. So the QR technology is not a new technology. I remember, when it was a while and it was sort of neat thing, and then it just sort of disappeared for a while, but it's making a comeback now. Likewise with little NFCs, receivers that, you put them in certain places and you tap them to get the information that's off that sensor. So I hope that answers your question, Marianne. I think I'm amazed how the COVID pandemic has also helped close the digital divide. The amount of folks that went from barely using a computer or phone to now becoming Zoom and Microsoft Team masters. So I think the need to adapt is going to help facilitate the access to these types of surveys.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, I will assume that means that everyone feels good about this moving forward. This seems like a great initiative, and as was alluded to, we can tweak as we go and continuously improve the input and the feedback that we get. Now, there are several other initiatives that are very close to also coming to council. One of them is the improved performance evaluations that take into account more of the village values, and in particular for the police department, our guidelines for village policing. I think everyone also knows that Laura has championed the decriminalizing minor misdemeanors. And Laura, I didn't see anything in the packet, and with Chief not here, I think maybe it's better to finalize that pilot at the next meeting unless you feel differently.
No, that would be fine. And as you know, for technological reasons, I was on the call, but I didn't get recognized at the JSCC. And there's a desire to just have the JSCC as a whole vote on it. And then it can go into action. It's going to be a protocol, again, that involves a pilot for mechanical failure stops first, and I hope it expands later after we do this pilot.
All right, thanks, Laura. Yeah, and one of the things I realized, Laura, I had tried to communicate with you, but I think the text didn't deliver. But I think it's very important when we present the proposals that we also highlight those future possibilities and how we expand the pilot, because I think that'll be informative for all of council. So anyway, I guess I want to say some good things are starting to be worked out, and I expect that we're going to see more initiatives coming to council for approval moving forward. Okay, so anything else before we move into the next item? All right, so we are going to talk about the council retreat, and I think specifically our goals. And I'm going to share a document that unfortunately I had thought was in the packet, but apparently I worked on it and didn't put it into the packet. Let me just pull that up again. But we had a robust but never enough time discussion about what we want to look at with, or what we want to prioritize in 2021. And so I think the first thing I wanted to do is actually just a quick kind of rundown about what is on this document that is still on a page, but it doesn't mean that we're focused on that. And kind of highlight, I guess, why we have started calling these village goals and not village council goals. And this was a change that happened 2 years ago. And the focus was on making sure that there's alignment across the local government so that there's not sort of the administration's working on this, council is working on this. We're all working together, and we want to make sure that we're aligned on those things. And I think what has happened over the last month or so are some really good discussions about how our village values tie into some of these more general goals that you see on the left side of the spreadsheet, and then some of the things that are tying into that are both policy-based but also action-based. So if you look at the first goal around affordability, one of the things that we had a good discussion about is, really focusing on what we can look at in 2021. You'll notice here that 4 things have been identified. I think some of the things that are particularly interesting to explore around incentivizing energy efficiency so that people can save costs and we can also protect the environment, as well as utility cost management. These are some strategies that we're looking at. We also realized from the retreat that bringing back a review of what the Energy Special Improvement District is about, the ESID, and how the PACE program ties into that would be a good idea, not only to promote the program, but for both residents and businesses to understand how they could take advantage of this and not only save costs, but again, create a better, a more affordable utility payment stream moving forward. We also have in here the community land trust model, which we're going to be talking about presumably at a future meeting. Under residential development, I think one of the things that we know is that there are some activities going on. We want to make sure that these are in line with our village values and goals. We also are planning to talk more with Home Inc. about how we can partner on affordability and bring this into some of the discussions that we have. And we don't want to forget about the fact that there are a variety of different housing types that we need, market rate, family, and so forth. And there's been some discussions that I hope move forward around different working groups that move those different housing types forward. Infrastructure was a big focus of our retreat, and there are a lot of different aspects of what we're looking for here. I think some of you have heard the discussions around this in a couple of our council meetings. And so this is where I want to make sure also that we're aligning very closely. And I remember Laura Curlis in particular, and I think a lot of council members shared this sentiment that we need to focus on our core services and certainly keeping our infrastructure resilient and sustainable is really important for doing that. Balanced budget, I think one of the things that's going to be really important to discuss is this idea of forming a finance committee so that we are looking at not only being careful about tracking our budget, because we did stay in the black last year despite COVID. This is a good, I think, framework and sort of platform to focus on moving forward. And then the other aspect of this is planning an even more opportunities for the public and anyone else to participate in our budget process. So look for discussions about that in the near future. Some of the other items here we did not get into much depth about at the retreat. And so I think this is where Marianne had mentioned taking a little bit more time, and I'm going to quit talking pretty quickly. But I did want to highlight that looking at the feedback from other items in the retreat, some documents that were shared from other council members, there are some things that were added under social justice, under the village vitality goal, and then some of the other things around environmental resiliency and active transportation. I'm not sure that we had a lot more to talk about that. And sustainable growth is closely connected to infrastructure. So the last thing I'll say is that, remember our goals document is a living document. So we should continue to reference it, come back to it. One of the things that still needs to be looked at more carefully is who's responsible, what are our resources, and making sure that we're really trying to look at how we're going to keep tabs on some of these action items that we plan to complete in 2021. So I'm going to stop there as far as an overview of what we did last Thursday. And Marianne, I'll go ahead and let you pick up next. And then I expect other council members will want to weigh in as well.
Thank you. So I was pretty frustrated at our goals retreat, primarily because the things that I most wanted to talk about, we didn't talk about. And also because I would like the retreat format to be a time, I guess, I mean, I've been thinking about this afterwards, where we all bring some ideas that may or may not exactly be on this chart, but that require some thoughtful discussion. So I'm still feeling sort of frustrated, but I'm going to move on. So the main thing that I had wanted to talk about, and actually I've been wanting to talk about for a couple months, is about the climate action and sustainability plan. I did include, I think, maybe a one-page little thing in the council packet. I've spent some months looking at climate action plans in other communities, reading fairly diligently through all the environmental listservs that I get. And I think it's time that this comes to council and we can talk about it. And so I'm not planning, I'm just sort of talking about it here. A climate action plan could be something very robust that includes a number of organizations and other entities in the village with leadership from the village government. Or it could be something that's only focused on the village government, or, you know, we could say, okay, we're not going to do it at all. But any kind of plan that has much involvement in it, it's probably going to take some paid staff person somewhere or other. And that's one reason why I think it's critical that we talk about this. So I would like to be able to make a presentation and have a discussion at council ideally at our next meeting, March 15th. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would have liked to have, well, that I want to talk about at the council level is about village-owned parks and land and how we manage them. Now, this would definitely fall under a climate action plan as we're looking for restoring native habitat on our properties. This is something that Josue and I have talked about. We own a number of parks. We own also, which are various from, you know, you take the glass farm might be the most naturalized. It's not a park, but public land, to Gaunt Park, which is much more geared toward recreation, or Ellis Park, which is a little bit in between, Beatty Hughes. And there was a 1990 something or other parks plan that had been done, I'm not sure, maybe by the Environmental Commission, I'm not sure who did it. And while some of those things happened, the plan was not actualized. So I think that, and that's a big deal, you know, trying to do something for all the land that we have, but we can take off bits at a time, which, for example, is what the Beatty Hughes project would be. The other two properties are the glass farm, and Laura probably will want to weigh in on this, but you know, we've been talking about the glass farm and doing stuff on the glass farm for a couple decades. And I think it's time that we move forward on thinking about the middle and the western section of that property. Rick Donahoe, who has adjoining property, is interested in possibly donating some of his property. We've had a number of meetings and there's a number of information, and I think it's time that we take some kind of step on that. And the other piece of property that came up at our goals retreat was the Cemetery Street property. And I think that we need to make a decision about whether we're going to, well, do nothing, or whether we're going to put some housing on there, or which I think we should do, or whether we're going to do parking area or what. But I am requesting that get on the council agenda sooner than later. So that's mainly what I wanted to say. So I'd say the main thing is that I really want to bring council a topic for discussion of a climate action plan to council at the next meeting, so we can have a robust discussion about how we want to proceed with that. That's it.
All right, thanks, Marianne. Other council members?
Well, to pick up where Marianne left off on the climate action plan, I feel like we've had a good start in the Environmental Commission talking about that. I guess I would like to see the Environmental Commission spend a little more time and bring some sort of proposal forward. The glass farm, we've had a meeting, and the there's been some discussion about with staff about perhaps it's time to have a study that really hasn't been done, and that is a study of the glass farm coming from a natural resources perspective. Like if you looked at it as a natural resource, what's there? And how can it help us solve some problems as a natural resource? One of the biggest problems that we have is kind of the stormwater detention, retention in that whole area. It's something reconstructed wetlands can help with, but that may not be the answer, but we don't have a good scientific study of the property from a natural resources perspective. I'm glad to see that on the, Brian, on what you did on the council goals, you included, I'm not sure if it was there before, create a master parks plan. I think Josue said it was what, 1996 or 98 was the last time we did one. And we have, you know, I think this has been a long neglected area of village services that, yes, we provide these, but we haven't done it in as intentional a way as maybe we could. For example, we don't have somebody designated as a parks department supervisor or department head. And really, there's probably way more than enough work if we had a department head, and then, of course, all the village crew work together to help maintain all of our facilities, indoor and outdoor. But I very much support doing a master parks plan, which would deal with good planning for what we have and what could be needs in the future. You know, the village goals are, I view it kind of like a pizza. You order a pizza and it has a lot of stuff on it and you're going to like almost all of it, but you know, those anchovies, not quite so much. So I like most of this. There's some things on here that individually I don't support, but I think it's a good document, and I'd like to see us go forward in general with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I like that idea of there's a few anchovies on there for all of us, right? Yeah, it does. I do want to give the credit on the Parks Master Plan to Josue and the team. And that was something that they had highlighted, and I wanted to make sure that that shifted to this document. You'll also notice there is a nod to the Glen Helen project around accessibility. And I will also, just so there's no surprises, that to me also extends to our commitment to the Yellow Springs Clifton connector, the trail that allows families and people with differing needs to access the Glen in ways that they can't do so right now. So, all right, Kevin, Lisa?
Yeah, well, I'll just add that I certainly support the plan as is. I wouldn't have ordered anchovies, but I would eat them if they're on the pizza. And with regard to a lot of the points that both Marianne and Laura brought up about, the environmental climate actions and sustainability plan, I think, I would expect that the Environmental Commission or some group like that, extension of that or a sub body of that commission would come forward with some succinct proposals, some actionable things or some things to consider. And with respect to previous studies for Glass Farm, were they all related to building on the property as opposed to just leaving it as is or enhancing it as a natural resource? I wonder, what the motive has been, because I do know that there have been studies, various soil studies at Glass Farm. And I'll just continue, and I'll finish, and anyone that can answer can say that. And I do like it's almost it seems like a small thing, Brian, to label these as village goals and not council goals, but at the end of the day, that it's like almost a stroke of genius. I mean, that is the way it works. There's not two sides of the coin necessarily, but we are a unified effort, and there's a lot of give and take and back and forth. And I think that does provide, for a more streamlined approach to addressing all of these issues. And it seems small in nature in terms of just changing the way of thinking like that, but it really, I think, has yielded a great deal of fruit in the way everyone is thinking about these various things. So again, I like the whole pie, as it were. There's a great deal of work here, even though it seems like it's been boiled down, to a cheat sheet. I mean, this one page is chock full of activity, and it's almost aggressive to consider that we get all of it done. I think we can get it all started this year, but there's certainly going to be some things that are going to continue into the future, as the slide suggests. But again, overall, like it. Just have questions about what's been, is the Environmental Commission going to push the Climate Action Plan, and what have the studies yielded of Glass Farm, if it hasn't already addressed and assessed the environmental impact of leaving it as is. That's all.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Lisa?
Yeah, so before I share some comments, I realize that there may be some people watching this meeting that are not able to view the Zoom chat. And so I just want to elevate that Josue and Florence Randolph have mentioned that there is a director of parks and services. And before we move on, I just wonder if that could be explained. Josue, maybe?
Yes, I would love to, and I wasn't sure how much opportunity I have on weigh in on a couple of things. One, we do have a director of parks and recreations, and we approach our work in twofold. One is physical structures and physical maintenance of the space. So we've got a team, Tanner and Johnny are spearheading the efforts of park maintenance, park upgrades, and improving physical component of parks. Then we've got the social services side of the house, and that's led by Sam, who is the director of Parks and Recreations activities. So when we're thinking about pools, we're thinking about the learning center, a lot of the activities that we lead as a community, they're led by Sam. Oftentimes, depending on the program, Sam is assisted by different team or department leaders in the organization. An example is the learning center. She's a partner with Florence Randolph on the learning center, various police officers and team leaders on different programs for children and youth. So we have a strategy. Things are done with some strategy work involved, and so we got those things covered. So I think that's some misinformation about how we approach our work there. On Kevin's point about the glass farm and what research or any studies have been done, we have a lot of material on the glass farm. There's quite an in-depth knowledge base on the glass farm, and we are fortunate to have a couple folks in the area, particularly Greene County Storm Water Management folks, Ken Middleton, who's been working on the glass farm for years. And we just last week we had a visit with him, a site visit, and we were able to revisit some of the ongoing issues at the glass farm. So it's not a wetland. We've had people weigh on it, professionals, that's their day-to-day job, and they've said it with certainty that it does not meet the standards of a wetland, that the glass farm is not a wetland. And so we know that from the professionals. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any on any of the topics that have been raised.
Well, I don't want to debate Josue, but one study that I'm aware has not been done has been looking at it from a natural resources point of view. So the studies that have been done have always been started with the question of what do we have to do to be able to build on this? Like, okay, there's hydric soils here, let's drain them. And then we can build on it, whether it's low density, high density, this many detention ponds. Nobody's done a wetland delineation study. And to say it's not a wetland is a little misleading, because if we stop farming it, it probably would become a wetland. So this is what I mean, is we need a study that's done that is from a natural resources point of view. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Laura, I'm not trying to debate it, and I'm going based on the professionals that we met, that I've spoken to, and some that you've met at the last walkthrough, and that's their job. That's what they do. They're professionals in this field, and they said it's not a wetland. We've got other issues on the site, such as the volume of water that's accumulated and causing volume and water flow issues.
Josue, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna break in. So I think the bigger point here, though, is that this indicates to me that having a follow-up discussion about this item on the agenda makes sense, but we don't need to discuss it right now.
Yeah, but I thank you, though. I just wanted to get I just wanted to keep things out of chat, for people who aren't in Zoom. And that's why I asked that clarifying question. So, I mean, my experience, and I really like Laura's analogy of the pizza, because my experience of how we get work done here, both on council and the village team and the community, is that people have different focus areas and passions. You can tell what different people are working on because of what we're reporting out on. You hear our voices talking about what we're working on. We're moving things forward. And so there are some things that are on these goals that I'm very committed to and will work in a very focused way on. And there's other things that I trust my colleagues on council and the valued members of the village team to work on. So I don't think we all need to buy into, not buy-in is the wrong thing. That's the wrong word. We don't have to like all these ingredients, like be passionately attached to them, so long as they all do tie up to the village values and that we agree at a high level that they are all meaningful for the community. And I support that at this point.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. All right, well, I think it's a great discussion. The fact that this did not end up in the packet means that everyone has an opportunity to still send me any tweaks, because this will be in the packet on the 15th. And, but I agree. I think this is a great document. I feel like it reflects everything we've discussed and we've heard. And most importantly, being on the list just means that we're now going to start discussing it and figuring out what we do or what we don't do. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate the process. And I'd also, I think, love to talk to folks about how we make our retreats the most that they can be, which requires everyone's input as well. So with that, let's move to our last item, which I believe is Marianne and Laura talking about the major solar project happening in the townships.
Thank you. I'm happy to go first and let Laura come up with whatever she would like to say. So I've been learning a lot about solar and the pros and cons of solar on farmlands. I've learned, that we have this PJM, which is, I guess you maybe would call it the 13 states that are on a subgrid, I guess it's what it would be. That was started in 1927 by energy companies in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. That's where the PJM comes from. And AMP is part of this thing. And also, when I looked at the pie chart of this whole grid, about 1/3 of the energy was coming from natural gas, almost 1/3 from nuclear, I think, and then other stuff in there, even though that's not where we're where our contracts are. So the more I've read about solar on farmland, the more I find out reasons why it can be a good thing and reasons why it can be a bad thing. The pros are that, it's putting renewable energy on the farmland. If the farmland isn't really being used, it's using the farmland, and it can help actually support farmers so that they can farm, because farmers don't necessarily make a lot of money. So it can be done well. The devil, of course, is in the details, and there are a lot of things that aren't really known about this particular project. But so that would be a negative, all the unknowns. How would it be managed? Would there be pesticides on it? How would they treat or mistreat the land as they put the panels on? What would happen to the panels afterwards? It takes farmland out of commission. And for the people in the area, a lot of people don't like it, how it is aesthetically. It could decrease the farming so that some of the core businesses that help farming make it more difficult to actually farm in the area, because once you start decreasing farming, then the supply chain is more difficult. I will say that I have a family member who is a farmer on a multi-generational farm in Darke County. And when I talked to him, he said he seemed to indicate that if a solar company came to him and wanted to put part of his farm on solar, he would do it. He said, most farms are corn and soybeans. It's going to animal feed, or it's going to biofuel, or it's going to other countries. We actually have more farmland than we need. So what I am going to recommend to council is that we support whatever the township decides to do. The township, my understanding, has decided that they want to be an intervener. They're working on finding an attorney. It's not clear whether the 3 townships will go in together or what the county will do. And it's also not clear that the township will actually oppose the solar as opposed to having criteria about what they would want to see happen or get more information. But I'm comfortable saying that if the Miami Township, that we see a way to support them. I'm not suggesting that we become an intervener. I think that I don't really support that, I don't think. But so Laura, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just a few things. I encourage the public to read what's in the packet. Now, what was in the packet last time, 2 weeks ago, was from a citizens group opposed. They should read that. What's in the packet this time is from the company promoting this particular project. But I do want to point people to pages in the packet, pages 98 and 105. So one of the reasons that I think overall these solar projects on prime farmland, which is what we have in this part of Ohio, are bad. If you look at the pictures on page 98 to 105, even in the company's, best presentation of it, just sit with those pictures and try to understand what's going on and how much the heavy equipment that's being used and the concrete to anchor those the metal frames, what that's doing to the land. This is highly impactful of the land, no matter how many pretty flower pictures you see, like after it's installed, and maybe they get some prairie flowers to grow under it. It's very impactful to the land, including compaction of the soil. The other thing, I point to page 112, the herbicide use is outlined on that page. I know that's a concern to a lot of people. They do intend to use herbicides. The prettiest face they can put on it is it will be about the same as if it was in conventional agriculture. The reason they like Ohio in this part of Ohio, there's maps showing in terms of Ohio, the solar resource is more intense in Southwest Ohio. And we have flat land. And that's why we're being targeted. I probably am the only one on council because I'm a lawyer. I've read a couple of different solar leases from 2 different companies, and they are very impactful in many ways also upon the families with the criteria that are put on them. So I would just tell people to definitely be very wary of these things. I'm glad that I would like to see us support the township. I was unable to get information I needed to work on a resolution, but we will continue to talk to the township and see what we can do to support them. Thank you.
Can I add to that, Brian? Okay. So based on Councilmember Curlis's request, I would need authorization from council to speak to the Greene County prosecutor. If the township's hiring outside counsel, the prosecutor is their statutory counsel. So any funding would have to go through Greene County. And I would need council's authorization because that would be essentially me negotiating with another attorney to find out what the township is doing. The township has not made, to my knowledge, any sort of public statement about what their position is because the application, as of today's date, still has not been docketed. And the case number on that is 21-0117-EL-BGN. Now, what I was able to do, because several council members had questions about the costs of outside counsel, was I made a public records request for Preble County on the Alamo Solar Project, which is represented by the same attorneys that's representing Kingwood and has filed the application. So to date, based on figures from the Preble County auditor, since that application down in Preble County was filed in 2018 and they just had their administrative law judge hearings, they have spent $48,661.85 on outside counsel. The school districts have spent $20,159.04 on outside counsel. So that's the information that I'm able to give you based on public records available on what these other communities have spent in terms of tax dollars on outside counsel with respect to getting intervention status for other solar projects pending before the Power Siting Board.
Okay, thanks, Brianne. So I guess related to that, do we need to make a decision about giving Brianne that permission at this point, or is it still conversations with the township?
I don't think that we need to do anything right now other than just stay tuned to what the township is doing. The township hasn't decided what they're doing, and it hasn't, I think as Brianne said, it hasn't been filed. I would not support us trying to become an intervener. That was not what I have been proposing in when I say support the township, just to clarify. But my sense in what information I've gotten is that we have time to just continue to try and stay on top of this and be in communication with the township. I've been talking with Don Hollister.
Mm-hmm.
I concur with Mary Ann's assessment. I think it's too soon for us to do anything in general. I would imagine we would have a stance where we would be in support of the township. However, the township needs to decide what the township wants to do. And then I think we can make further decisions at that point. But I think we're just in a wait and see mode right now.
Mm-hmm. Laura, do you agree?
I don't think we need a formal resolution to get some more information about what it means to intervene and how to go about it and how to coordinate with other government entities, but that's me. I do want to say one thing about how this might affect the village. You know, why would we independently intervene. There was one map that this was an impact I wasn't aware of, is acoustics. And interestingly, the decibel level at the center of the solar panel facility is something like 50 decibels.
Right.
Now, the sound of a loud lawnmower is about 90 decibels. But as you go farther out from it, it decreases, but that sound cloud around it does touch the Glen. And I think people at the Glen ought to look at that map and see to what extent, if any, maybe none, that it impacts that. But the Glen is in the village. We annexed it. That, in terms of direct impact, seemed to be the only one I could see, other than maybe runoff into the Glen, although they claim it's the same as conventional agriculture. So, you know, I think our role is mainly to support the township. Thanks.
Okay. Well, that sounds great to me, and I appreciate you both following up on that, and we should definitely stay on top of it. Okay, so we have one new business item, and that's a follow-up to we officially recognize Juneteenth as a holiday in the village. And this next piece is kind of related to, I think, where maybe we first heard about this initiative is at the state level, where they are making it, or the bill that has passed the Senate that's in the packet not only makes it a recognized holiday, but also makes it a paid holiday. And so if this resolution passes the House, that would mean that there would be 11 official state holidays. So they are proposing to add an extra holiday, and that kind of relates to the chart that is in our packet. So I'm going to let Josue briefly highlight what he provided for us, and then we'll have a discussion.
Thank you, Brian. In your packet, I provided a comparison chart between the holidays that are observed at the federal level, the state level, and Yellow Springs. And you see that the total number of days, we're pretty much on par with 10 holidays being observed at the federal level, 10 plus a partial day. In the state of Ohio, the partial holiday is the election day that's officially observed in the state. And then Yellow Springs is 10 days. Now, there are 2 days that we do not observe, but we do provide them as holidays to the staff, and that is Veterans Day and Columbus Day. And the days that we offer are the day after Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve. So we're on par with the number of holidays that we provide with the state and the federal level. So I provided that as just as a reference of what is commonly provided at the state and federal level. And if council wanted to provide the 11th day, it would be in line with what the state wants to provide that additional date, and you have the information on how many official holidays we observe and we provide to staff as time off.
Okay, thanks, Josue. So, I mean, I've already thought about this, but I'd love to hear any other comments, questions, thoughts.
I just have a quick clarifying question, and maybe I'm just missing it on that chart. Are any of the holidays what I in the corporate world think of as floating holidays? In other words, holidays that you can take yourself discretionary because they're important to you out of a certain total number of discretionary holidays?
All those holidays on the charts are days that are observed and our government offices are closed. They are part of our time off. There are other time off that we make available that people can take off as when they need it to. So we've got personal time off, and employees can take that off at any point. It is common to see folks take their birthdays off. And for those that have served the military, they take Veterans Day off. But that's part of their personal time off.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, other questions or comments?
I would just say I appreciate the information. It helps really make it succinct, Josue, providing this chart and the other information that you provided. I mean, the bill, it says a lot. Who would have thought that just adding one day would take that much verbiage to explain? But there's a lot of financial ramifications around what some might think of it as a minor decision, but we certainly support the endeavor, but do understand it can be a big deal from a corporate perspective.
And I should add, since you brought that up about the cost, if you looked, and it is a lot of language, but if you looked at the way Juneteenth is designated in that Senate bill, it is one of the holidays where if it falls on a Saturday, it's recognized on the Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, it's recognized on the Monday. So if we were to adopt this and follow that route, it would not involve, the Saturday double time or whatever that was mentioned before. If we were going to recognize it, on a Friday or a Monday, like other holidays. Any other questions or comments?
I have a couple comments. I recall that Brian or Josue, I think one of the two of you suggested if we had this as a holiday, taking away a personal day, which of course isn't giving people an extra day off, but it would be one way to recognize it. So what I just want to come back to the reason for making it a holiday. And I also want to consider Indigenous Peoples Day, that for both of these times, I think it's critical that village government have some participation in ceremonies, acknowledgement, working with, in this case, working with the group that is working on Juneteenth, so that it's not just, okay, people get an extra day off. I mean, the reason for it is because it's a critical juncture, how do you say that, in our history, and to acknowledge that, and a certain amount of, for white people, atonement, I think, and celebration. So regardless of what we do in terms of making an extra holiday, I really want us to have it be more meaningful than just a day off.
Mm-hmm. Laura, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. What does it cost the village to give a paid holiday in terms of just dollars?
We have two types of employees. Those that we have the police department, which do not get the holiday off. They, in lieu of getting the day off, they are paid 8 hours of whatever their regularly hourly rate is. So that's the officers. The rest of the staff, there is no additional cost from a budget perspective, because they would just get the day off, and that expense is budgeted for the year. So I could run what is the actual rate of the officers that will be eligible to receive a payment in lieu of taking a holiday off, and I can provide that figure to council. That would be the financial outlay of providing a holiday.
And I see a couple holidays on here that if I was given a choice, do I want to take Juneteenth or President's Day, which has always been kind of a meaningless holiday to me. Or if I wasn't, for example, Christian, I may prefer to work on Christmas Day and take a nice summer holiday off like Juneteenth. What about giving people a choice like we're floating Columbus and Veterans Day?
Well, we don't celebrate.
We're not floating Columbus or Veterans Day. We actually provide another day as that's a holiday. So instead of Columbus Day, we're offering day after Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve. So there's no choice for the employee to say, well, I'll take Columbus Day or Christmas Eve.
Oh, you're making them take Christmas Eve.
Yes, it's a holiday. We observe it.
And day after Thanksgiving.
Correct.
Yeah, Columbus Day is not an option in Yellow Springs. It's Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah, right. I know.
I'm sorry, anything else, Laura?
What's it mean, we don't have like the selection day is a partial, that's for the state. Is it like people get half a day off?
In Yellow Springs, if our employees need to come in later or take off earlier to go vote, we would allow that. While we don't have it spelled out as the state of Ohio has it spelled out that it's a partial holiday and there's a specific language for it, we don't have that, but it's a practice that we have in place that if anyone needs to go vote, we're not gonna get in the way of their civic duty to go vote. Fortunately, for me, when I needed to vote, I went to Antioch West. Took me all but 15 minutes to be in and out, and I got to keep a stylus.
Well, I'm trying to get more at the idea of there are such things as like a choice a government makes is to give people half a day off for something.
Yes, and Laura, I want to go back to your previous question about making it optional. There are some things that will be impractical to make optional. We wouldn't open a facility just because one employee chose not to take the day off. I think it will become inefficient and impractical to run an operation that can be properly staffed. So that's the challenge of making it optional. I think we either provide it as a holiday that we observe and we close the services that we can close, or most of our government activities except for police, or we make it a floating holiday and they can it becomes part of their personal time and they take it whenever they want to take it off. I think in going back to Mary Ann's point about why is it that we observe these historical moments, it's about nation building, it's about building a cultural and understanding of our history so that it informs our present and our future. And I think that's the importance of Juneteenth being a holiday on a specific day. It is intentionally honored and celebrated in a particular day.
But we could decide to undeclare like President's Day and then declare in the village we are going to honor Juneteenth.
Well, yeah, certainly, as you had suggested in your previous point, that someone could choose not to observe the 25th. I think council could cancel Christmas Day and give it as any other day.
So what are we doing tonight? Are we making a motion and having a preliminary vote, or what are we doing now?
I think we're giving direction as to what legislation might look like if we bring this back. I think, yeah.
I have one more question. This seems to be, which is fine, is this being led from council versus a groundswell of organizations and citizens demanding that we do this? I don't think we've gotten a single letter.
Yeah, I think Juneteenth, I don't remember who brought it up first. I think we recognize that there was this initiative happening at the state level. And Juneteenth did get a lot of attention last year. But yeah, I agree. I don't think that there's a large grassroots movement that is pushing on this.
I did see something in the packet though, didn't I? From Dr. Magruder.
Oh, okay.
You did that. I sent that out today. It came a little late.
I didn't see it.
That's important.
It wasn't in the packet though. I have not seen that. So
I had been in touch with Kevin Magruder because of a side conversation with someone who doesn't live here about Emancipation Day. So I was in conversation with Kevin and this Paul LaRue, and Kevin then wrote in the email why he felt that Juneteenth was the most important date. And then he talked also about some of the work that's being done by both of the churches in preparing for celebrating this year. And I thought it was important, what he said was important, and that's why I included it. But I didn't think about doing it until this afternoon, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, I mean, I guess I think there are two things that we should give direction on. So one of them is related to if we are contemplating adding an additional paid holiday. And then to me, the second thing is more around what I heard Josue say, which I agree with, is what, as a village government, are we recognizing? And so for me, I think it's important that Juneteenth and Indigenous Peoples Day are two recognized holidays in the village, full-on holidays. And, you know, right away, I think of the Christmas Eve holiday as something that is great to use for a personal day. But I feel that we have two important holidays that need to be elevated. So anyway, so those are kind of the two things in my mind.
Well, and I know the day after Thanksgiving, it's pretty sacred for a lot of people, but you know, I don't know about you, but I worked for many, many years for a number of employers that it wasn't a sacred holiday. It wasn't a holiday at all. If you wanted to take it off and you got lucky, you might be granted it as a personal day.
Okay, so any other thoughts? Okay, so I think a good way to move forward is, Josue, it would be good to talk to our village team members and make sure they understand this discussion is happening, understand, you know, I guess why I think it is a policy level kind of discussion. And I think any feedback there would be helpful in making a decision. And then I think we bring a proposal forward. I'm hearing enough to suggest that it's something that we want to make a decision on. So any other thoughts? Okay.
I'm thinking two ways about this. First of all, I think that the recognition of Juneteenth as a holiday is critical. Critical. Secondly, I'm not sure that it wouldn't be okay to introduce this idea of floating or flexible holidays. And I actually hadn't thought, Josue, I want to thank you for bringing up that point about closing the building, right? And the impact economically of, is the Bryan Center open or is it closed? So I want you to know that I'm not totally, I'm just thinking through that. But when I think about, I also agree with the point that was made about the opportunity for us as a village to be an active participant and contributor to recognition and celebration of Juneteenth as a holiday means that it's really likely there might be something going on at the Bryan Center anyway. And so in which case the building's open, that people are there, you know. So I'm not sure that I think that for Juneteenth, that there won't be people in the building anyway. So, I mean, is the finance department going to be open? I don't know. Is the utility office going to be open? I don't know. But the building's open. So I feel that we should support it, but I want it to be meaningful. And I'm not quite sure what that looks like yet. You know, I'm not quite sure. So just to say, that's what I'm thinking. And if I'm very silent on this, it's just because I'm not quite clear. And I also think it's cool that the state is supporting it, right?
Yeah. I don't think it has passed.
Well, I mean, at least it's out there, right? I'm just glad for anything like that. So yeah. If we're going to be able to put any, you know, it's like volleyball, right? You like bump and then you lift and then you spike. So if they need somebody to lift, we should continue lifting for all the times that we write stuff to other place is saying, no, we're not for that. You know, maybe we need to say we're for this. So that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I do know that there have been Juneteenth celebrations with respect to the question about, local concern. In 2019, there were celebrations throughout the village. It didn't really have an opportunity to grow because of the pandemic. So whatever preliminary plans did exist were squashed last year. There is some more momentum building, and I will try to get tapped in to that. And as I finish my sentence, we've had the pizza analogy, we've had the sports analogy. Can't come up with anything right now, but I'm waiting for that third one. Somebody's got to come up with something.
All right. Well, this is, I think this is a great thing to talk about. I believe that we've given enough to come up with a proposal or a couple options to talk about at the next meeting. So, all right. So thanks everyone. Okay. Manager's report. I didn't see anything in the packet. I don't know if, was there a manager's report in the packet?
Surely should have been.
All right. Did somebody else see it? And I just got a special packet. But anyway.
No, I didn't see it.
I'm sorry about that, Brian. I don't know how that happened. I will pull up my manager's report. And
It's absolutely not Josue's fault. He sent the manager's report and I sent it off to clerk base. I did not follow up, so it's not on Josue.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm
Okay.
sorry, and I should have checked.
Well, that's okay. But any highlights that you have, Josue?
Yes, Sarah, let me sure that you get a copy. First, I want to start off what I didn't get a chance to fully flesh out in the manager's report, and that is the update on the solar project. We talked a bit about it at the council retreat and where we are with the solar projects, and we've decided to break up the projects into two separate projects. One is the utility component of the project, and that is putting a 2 megawatt system out at the farm, and we're treating that as a utility infrastructure. That's for power generation. Right now, the proposals are coming back, or at least the initial concept for us to talk through a PPA is coming in a bit higher than what we expected, and it's coming in at 8 cents, and our power cost average is 9 cents. That's the same rate that we are paying for residential solar customers for us to buy their electricity. We are looking for a significantly lower price point for a per kilowatt basis. And the reasoning behind that is that primary driver for the utility grade improvement of solar on the farm is to replace 2 expiring contracts. That's the EDI landfill and the wind contracts. The wind contract is 3 cents a kilowatt. So, for us to get down to that low, we need something very competitive. So 8 cents a kilowatt hour is coming a bit high end for us. So we're working through the design concept. We're eager to wait to see what AMP will provide for their 50 megawatt system that they're building. And we're going to keep an eye out on the development of this Kenwood Solar as they're building out a 175 kilowatt farm. I know it's a sensitive issue as some folks do not want to see that go through. But if that does become a reality, there's no reason why we couldn't buy from them or find a way to buy power from them, as it would be just so close to us. So that's something we'll keep on the radar, but I won't make any public commitments to exploring that until we see it, the filing happen in council decides what position is going to take on that development, because I think it will be inappropriate for me to try to explore a contract with them and council takes a position to oppose the solar farm. So I'll wait to hear more from council on that regard. So that's where we are in the solar. On the The pavilion, we've made some design changes with from the feedback that we received from council, and that is that council wanted to, the feedback was we want to maximize the space that's underneath the canopy or the pavilion. And so we've adjusted the design plan to eliminate the pillars in the middle. By eliminating the pillars in the middle, we also have to adjust the pitch design. So we can't have that double pitch roof. So we have to have an angle roof, just one pitch pointing south. So we've made that design change. We've seen the cost has remained somewhat around steady in the 700,000, which when we price out the payment or the debt service for that, compared to the what's called the cost avoidance, how much money we'll be saving by using the energy that's produced by that solar farm versus what we would normally pay at the John Bryan for electricity use. That spread is about a $5,000 difference. So we pay about $38,000 in energy expenses for the John Bryan Center. And with the debt service of that project, we'll be looking at around $43,000. So we are then we're looking at justifying that that $5,000 expense, and there's plenty of things that we would do in that canopy that would justify that $5,000 expense. For one is the creation of a public space that will be used as multi-purpose for activities and whatnot, and there's a tangible value to that and an intangible value. The tangible value would be, well, what are folks renting it out and what are they using it for? What kind of economic activity could be directly attributed to that space? The farmer's market, I hope you've all seen the farmer's market out here at the John Bryan Center. And in April and May, we're gonna see a lot more of that activity. I think that there's an economic figure that we can put on those activities. I've met with Michelle and Amy, and they're both eager to talk about the value that a farmer's market brings to the community. And if we needed to make estimates of what it would cost to rent the space and calculate the value for that, they are happy to work with us on that. As you know, in a previous location, the farmer's market paid to have their farmer's market. And now under my tenure and working with the farmer's market, I find that it's an important community development activity, and it has significant support for the agricultural ecosystem in the community. Mary Ann has talked about, supporting our farms, and this is a way to do it, providing a marketplace for them. So there's a lot of tangible value of having a farmer's market under the canopy. There are other things that we can look to justify that additional $5,000 expense. We rent out the space towards music events. We've had Spring Fest and others that like to hold events down here, and there could be a rental income associated with the use of that space. Someone in my office has a very creative idea. They think that we could put an ice skating ring on it. I think it's a great idea. I love the idea of having a skating ring in Yellow Springs. I understand that we had one in the past. Megan may have some pictures on that, but so there are creative uses that we could have in that space to justify the $5,000. That being said, I am still working on the project, on the conceptual project, to see if we can find opportunities of lowering that cost by looking at the finances. Finances we're looking at are having a 15 or 20-year loan and looking at different interest rate structures, what it will cost at 3%, 4%, 5%. And some of those numbers won't come clear to us unless we went out to a lender and looked to finance that. And we're looking at PACE financing and other mechanisms to finance that development. So depending on
does that mean this could be the first PACE project?
This could be it. This could be it. So there's a team that works with the PACE project explicitly for solar projects. So as you know, PACE is primarily an energy improvement fund. In the solar farm, it's right into that. So there's a special program under the PACE model that finances solar projects. So yeah, that is an activity that's one of the financing mechanisms that the Solar Power and Light have proposed. So that's in a nutshell. Other things that are important that we're looking at is the pool. We are making plans for how to operate the pool in 2021. I'll come out of the gate and said we are opening the pool. If we could open in 2020 with so much uncertainty and so much precaution, we can certainly open the pool in 2021. So if you haven't bought your trunks yet, start thinking about what that looks like, because we're opening the pool. Now I'll come back to council with a proposal on the rate. As you know, cost of operating the pool is, with these requirements, is significantly higher than it has been in the past. But I'm sensitive to increasing rates that are beyond the reach of folks. And you know, we are committed to keeping the only public pool in Greene County, it's integrated pool, open. And so we'll work through the numbers. But I can confidently say we'll open the pool in 2021. And the rest of the reports included, sorry, Judy has just circulated. So if you have any questions, or Brian, if you have time, I know we're 9:19. I'm happy to go through the report.
I think unless anyone, I mean, if you've highlighted what you think is important, unless anyone has any questions, but I am confirming, because I looked at Clerk Base, that if anybody saw a manager's report, then they must have dreamed it. So.
Oh, it was completely, no, I absolutely
Right.
totally blew it.
No problem. I did see Samantha's letter though. So, all right. Any other questions for Josue before we talk about future agenda items? Okay. So future agenda items, anything that we've got, some things that are already here, anything that's missing?
I think
Sorry, Mary Ann wanted to discuss the climate action plan.
Yep.
And the Juneteenth proposal.
Yes. Laura, did you have something else?
I think in April, and this probably needs to come through Planning Commission first, but it looks like on our horizon, we probably are going to have another discussion about transient guest lodging, just because of the number of requests that are coming into the Planning Commission.
Oh, so you mean we're getting a lot of new requests?
Yeah. So that might be on the horizon. You can talk to staff about that. The weeds, I'm calling it the weed ordinance. It's not all that exciting for those of you who like the herb. This is the weeds, natives, and managed landscapes ordinance, and that needs to come back in April sometime.
Yeah, I would just say, related to the transient guest lodging, and Denise highlighted this, I think, at the last meeting, the reason that we made it conditional. So I hope that is being kept in mind when these decisions are being made of why we made it conditional. Okay, anything else?
I just want to say conditional definitely slowed it down, but we have people in the community. We've talked about it. It's a concern. And I'll put it, if you want to put that on the agenda, we would love to share with you where we're at and how many people are owner occupied and how many aren't, and some thoughts on tweaking that.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should have it at the next meeting, priority, because yeah, that makes me nervous. And yeah, and I'm sure Kevin Stokes is feeling nervous, even though he's not saying anything. So,
well, I would appreciate coming back to council because it's urgent now, and I think my understanding from council's position on this was that it was always intended to be something council to frequently check in and adjust as necessary. So this is the time before we get in, as the applications pick up, before summer kicks in, I think it's a good time to review the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, COVID, man, like 2020 just did a number on all of us. But you're right, Josue, it was the distinct intention of both council and planning commission, to try this, see what things look like, The unfortunate thing is I don't know whether 2020 was a good test case to really gauge what normal growth of the transient guest lodging facilities would be. Judy, when are you thinking about doing the Juneteenth discussion? Do you have,
I have it coming back on the 15th. That doesn't have to, but.
Well, I mean, I do know that there's been some discussions in the community. I'd like to commit to maybe by April 5th, bring something to council, because I do know that there's some activity and they are expecting some level of council and village support. And I'll go ahead and just put myself on the hook for saying something about it on April 5th.
Just, Brian, do you know when that's likely to go for a vote at the state level?
I don't. I know that they, it didn't pass the House last year, so they're bringing it back this year.
And yeah, Laura, I think we ought to just, change the order of the words in the title of the weed ordinance, because my 14-year-old self chuckles every time I hear about it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, anything else? All right, great meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, everyone, take care and think about everyone you love. Bye-bye.
Amen. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Bye.